Redeemer Church held its first Sunday service January 13th, 2008. We opened up at the Civic Center, and about a year later we moved into the current facility where we've been since that point in 2009. Before we started, we developed a 2020 vision, and that was to plant 20 churches in the United States, and then to send out 20 missionary teams by the year 2020. And since that point, we've sent out 28 global workers, and we will have, by God's grace, planted 20 churches by the end of 2020 through our Redeemer Network, and some of that is, second and third generation church plants from the churches we planted. Really exciting. We're on the verge of another defining moment, just as critical as those early days at Redeemer, that will mark God's work through our church for years to come. Redeemer Church is profoundly convicted and determined to see every believer in our scope become healthy and active disciples to the glory of God. And we desire to see every disciple thriving spiritually in all areas of our lives, being sent out as disciples to make disciples, starting in Lubbock all the way to the ends of the earth. So we believe that God has called Redeemer Church to play an integral part in His kingdom work, and to consider the cost, find Jesus is worth it, and then boldly obey the Great Commission. Worth It is a 24-month generosity initiative in which we are going to take a journey with God. That's the whole point of it. And we're going to surrender to Him our plans, our priorities, and our purposes. Our primary goal is to have 100% of Redeemer Church to engage with us, and considering that Christ is worth it with your financial resources. And we want you to give all of who it is that you are, and that includes your financial resources. And we want to equip you, if you want to be very specific about it, we want to equip you as a disciple in the area of financial generosity. Even if somebody were to write a check, our elders, whenever we were wrestling with Worth It, if someone were to write a check for the total amount, we would still want to do it, because we want you to know the joy of generosity and following Jesus as a disciple, specifically in this area.
Our giving story is one of struggle. We were a train wreck, just like a lot of couples at that age, and really were not disciplined with our money, what we had of it. And so we got involved in studying God's principles for stewardship and faithfulness, and what that means in terms of our prioritization of how we live our life.
We found that when you put your priorities in the right order, when you put God first, then everything else just seemed to kind of fall into place.
The secondary goal relates to some of the specific dreams that God's given us, and I'd like to share those with you. The first goal and dream we have of Worth It relates to equipping. Just to help you understand what equipping means, equipping is everything we're currently doing. It's not less than that. It includes that of worship services and what we do with our small groups that we call gospel communities, and trying to care for you, and everything that we are currently doing, our communications and all of that. So we're going to keep running with all those things, but the most important thing to us that we feel like has the potential for the most impact is a culture of intentional discipleship.
So intentional discipleship was Jesus' primary method to spread the gospel, and we want to pattern ourselves after Him and form discipleship groups called Grow Groups. So we'll keep preaching the Bible, and our basic DNA remains intact, and we want to improve our biblical literacy and our care, but we really want to get much better and clear about being intentional disciple makers. So we're putting that at the center of our equipping vision.
The second part is we want to consider how it is that we're going to be focusing on college students, that we want to reach everyone. We want to reach families and older singles and youth and kids, and we want to do all that. But we're going to uniquely fund and focus on reaching more students. And we want to invest specifically and strategically on engaging and mobilizing the next generation of college students as our primary means of sending. That leads me into the third point of our vision, and that is we want to be all about sending. And so we've been sending for a while. If you remember the 2020 vision that we began Redeemer with, but we wanted to link that focus on college students with our sending.
We want to be faithful in sending out those disciples into the harvest. The fields are ready, but there just aren't enough workers. And we do this by setting two main goals. First of all, we want to plant one new church in America each year for the next 20 years, directly through Redeemer's efforts and through the Redeemer Church Planting Network. Our main focus will be to plant churches in cities with large populations of college students. Second is we desire to mobilize and train and send out 40 global workers within the next 5 years to work among the unreached people groups of the world. We want to do this by facilitating and spearheading church planting movements among these unreached peoples. We're asking the Lord to use Redeemer in the next 20 years to send a total of 600 missionaries to the nations.
The final area of our vision is what we're going to describe as strengthening. And we realize that we have some facility limitations, and this is really in support of the first 3 points of equipping and focusing on college students and sending, that we need a larger facility for all 3 of those things. We're actively right now considering expansion options here on how we can have more worship space, more equipping space, and you just think about all of these areas together. More place to train in biblical literacy, more classroom space, more worship space as you reach more families, singles, students, all of those things that are part of what we want to do with our focus as well as our sending. That funnel has to be bigger at the top to be able to get to where you want to be in terms of sending. So that is what we want to do with strengthening prayerfully.
I think as we look forward to the next 2 years, that the Worth It initiative is going to impact our church in ways we can't even imagine. The biggest part, I think that our family as a whole is going to be more generous, and we're going to be more open to opportunities that we're currently not aware of. And we're going to impact not only our church, but we're going to impact our city, and we're going to impact the country and the world. It's just going to have this ripple effect.
We believe that God has called Redeemer Church to play an integral part in His kingdom work. We're one part of it, but we think that God's given us a significant part to play. We're going to consider the cost, we're going to find Jesus as worth it, and we're going to boldly obey the Great Commission.